What's up, everybody? This is RC Apologist with Theological Discussion, and of course, I'm your host. Wait, I think I just went over that. Anyways, welcome to Theological Discussion, and we're gonna be doing pretty much just like that. However, the difference is that we have with us a special guest as well as someone who is very controversial. He is no stranger to the whole thing. He is a individual that is well known within the fur community, rather it be famously or infamously, whichever the routes you want to go with for that. But a while back via Telegram, I had brought up to the suggestion, since I had heard that he got in contact with a certain friend of mine, they were going to discuss something. I figured another way to do it is that since I've done these programs before and I've debated and talked in conversations, likewise in discussion dialogues with all kinds of people, including whatever kind of unbeliever there would be on either Christianity or any other topic for that matter. And I've met him like once a long time ago. It was during the Ask Reformed Christian Apologist show immediately as I get put on a block list. And I guess he got word of that and heard about it and then decided to invite him on, and he came on. Now, of course, there's been some sort of things that I've had between the group that he's associated with, but even after the splits, we still keep in contact. So showing that even then of differences and disagreements doesn't mean that I still don't have any kindness or sympathy towards other people, regardless of where they're coming from and all that. So that being said, to go ahead and get this out of the way, we are going to be introducing the guest, whose name is, well, none other than Foxler. Foxler, welcome to the show.
Oh, glad to be here.
All right, glad to have you. Now then, I want to go ahead and sort of, get the cards off the table here. How long has it been since we've talked? Like in terms of like when we last on here. Like I'm not talking about in general.
Yeah, video cut. Yeah. It's almost been a year, maybe a little less.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember the last time I was with you.
Well, I mean, as long as it ain't in the bed, that's fine. But I don't know. Just me. I like sleeping alone. It's like the curse of me that I'm just probably gonna die alone and die a virgin. But anyways, that being said, so you did agree to the topic because I did out of the blue throw it out there, Christianity, and when you consented to that, then you also mentioned that you had questions or hard questions you were going to ask. So let me just ask this before we kind of proceed on with this. Like, what kind of questions you got? Like, am I going to be like stumped, or is this just something you have in mind?
I don't know, actually, to be truthfully honest, if it's going to be hard questions or not. Really, like any person on this world, sometimes we want answers to the universe, and some of those questions involve around that. So something that probably won't be ever to be answered, but maybe your views, your faith may be able to guide some direction.
Right. So let's go ahead and then so I guess for this, because I do of course want to ask some things out of you, but I want again to let you be the first one to have the throw at this. So feel free to take it away.
Throw at you? Okay.
Well, hey, I've had the worst I've ever had was debating R and Ra, like about just a few weeks ago recently. So
oh man. Well, I love how you throw it in my court, and I was like, oh shit, he's gonna do that. I don't know how I'm gonna handle this. Because to be honest, I have no idea what I'm walking into either. So I think the big question, on everybody's mind that comes towards this path once in their life and they make a decision based on it is that, is there, to me, is it necessary to have religion?
Hmm.
That's probably my big one right there.
Okay. So when you say religion, because a lot of people keep using that term and how they define it, well, what do you mean by religion? Like, how would you go about defining that?
Well, based on a personal experience with my father's side of that, and just kind of using broad definitions as well,
Hmm.
to put it in a context that I actually understand, is that a religion is a form of of how do we put it, to shape one's path in a direction which has no answer.
Hmm. Well, to me, I would disagree with that case, and I would say by that, yeah, definitely people don't need religion, but I don't think Christianity falls into that category of trying to go into something of which has no direction or has no um, answers.
Well,
Um,
I'm not saying that the religion itself doesn't have a direction, or or Christianity doesn't have a direction. I'm just saying that
mhm.
a person doesn't have a direction, so they look for direction, and sometimes that
Right.
direction has to be created. And for me, that's where I see some of this is created from.
Hmm. Okay. So the reason I think would be that for Christianity, for religion, is that it is a worldview that without this particular worldview or this understanding, you really can't make sense of anything. Basically, this is how reality is seen. So, for example, within the Christian religion um, versus, say, an atheistic worldview, um, without the Christian religion, you can't really make sense out of things such as, for example, the laws of logic, the uniformity of nature, morality, and moral values. These are all things that are consistent and entirely dependent upon the Christian worldview. In other words, that which what we're talking about with the Christians. For example, like objective moral values that everyone knows right and wrong um, because of the fact that God has given the law to them, that they all know right and wrong because it's built into them. In Romans chapter 2, verses 14 to 15 mention this. Um, but in the atheistic worldview, the morality is subjective. It is completely, off, just up to your own opinions and such. And so because of that, um, that would include that, uh, that view is wrong and inconsistent, because if that's the case, subjective morality, then when someone says I think rape is wrong, but then you have the rapist that comes saying I think rape is right, how ultimately do you then decide that battle? That it's because remember, it's subjective, meaning it's only up to you what you think is morally right and wrong. Whereas in the Christian worldview, the objective standard is settled with the Christian God, since he has established objectively for all human beings what is right and wrong, and has given us that law in our hearts to know right and wrong. So whenever we say that something is morally right or morally wrong, that's not just simply an opinion that we have. That's the knowledge of right and wrong we have been given objectively from God. So there would be an understanding of that there, and that's why for that particular issue. But then again, as I mentioned, there's the laws of logic, the uniformity of nature, other things that you can't make sense of without religion within Christianity. So I think that would be the main reason why people need it, is not just simply because of guidance and feeling right, but rather that it's also that reality works within a certain worldview, and within the Christian worldview, that's how reality works. We see it when we go and interact. We basically interact as if the Christian God exists, and we know he exists.
Okay, so is, let me ask this then. I mean,
Hmm.
it makes some sense, but I'm still very clouded on the subject.
Hmm.
And I would like to use your example of rape. So,
Sure.
in that morality sense and societal component, there is a component that says that rape is wrong.
Hmm.
well, and I'd like to break that down in steps so we can start seeing when it becomes, well, not rape itself, but the concept of reproduction. That's where I'm going to go to, because that would be the only reason that somebody would want to take pleasure in a sexual manner. So, so the first step is that, why do we need to reproduce? I mean, that should be pretty obvious, I hope. Is to, for me, as I understand, is to carry on our genes and our offspring to the future of our species.
Mm-hmm.
Which I mean, could you agree that that would make some sense, that we need to do that to continue our species?
Mm-hmm.
So
yes, I believe that reproduction definitely, it is needed to carry about. The Bible says to be fruitful and multiply.
right.
So see you there again, right there.
Well, okay, so then the question comes in: why do we have the desire to do so, to be fruitful and to multiply?
Well, it depends, of course, on the different aspects, because when it comes to us having the desire to be fruitful and multiply, some people don't necessarily have that desire. Sometimes they ended up having the desire to just simply, be romantically and sexually attracted to their partner, and they end up having a baby regardless because they didn't use protection. But some people who do want to start a family, be fruitful and multiply, I believe for that is that, they have whatever their intention and their desire is for that particular reason. So it's mostly, of course, still up to them on that regard as to why they decide to choose that reason to do that.
I mean, that's understandable too. I think that is a higher plane of complexity there. As you're talking to a furry,
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna probably break it down a little bit lower, because I would say, okay, so
Mm-hmm.
so if there is a component, the need to reproduce, so what is that component? And I would apply that to all
Mm-hmm.
life forms that do it. So not just us, but animals as well.
Right.
So what is their drive then? Then that would be my question. Yeah.
Well, as far as the animals, we don't know, as far as because we don't have the mindset of that particular animal, and the Bible doesn't really focus too much on their mindset either. So at any point of us trying to guess would just, again, be a guess, a speculation. We would have to say, just simply, to be as basic as possible, that can be an honest answer, is simply their animal instinct.
Okay, so speculation is all we have,
Mm-hmm.
based on what you're saying, and I could
Right.
say, I could say that, I could take the scientific route and say,
Right.
it's just chemicals, influencing the body and the brain.
Mm-hmm.
No, I don't know if that's acceptable to you.
Well, there are parts where, certain aspects of the sexual drive. There's especially when we're dealing with pornography, for example, you have sort of the dopamines such that go on within the brain that sort of kind of fuel that drive. And I think we can have the same kind of similar thing going on within, uh, when someone gets aroused, sexually aroused, sort of has that kind of thing that helps mentally, as well as even physically, to put them in the mood. So yeah, I would kind of agree there with the science. And again, that's pretty much what I was just saying earlier, though. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So, if we could say there's some science and there's some effect chemically that's going on,
Mm-hmm.
then if there's a reaction that's being caused, so if there
Mm-hmm.
is a reaction, just like if you put a match to a gasoline, it will react. You'll get combustion.
Right.
You could say that
Yeah.
and this is a long stretch, and I'm not applying any morals to it. I'm not applying
Mm-hmm.
anything that, did I agree or disagree. I'm just looking at it as a very simplistic, overview. And the
Mm-hmm.
overview is, okay, the idea of someone reproducing with someone else, even if
Yeah.
it's not consensual, is still a chemical trigger then, couldn't it be?
Well, I would agree with that, but of course, I think then depending on because again, I don't think I got your worldview or what your particular belief is. Um, as
Well,
far as
I mean, if you ask any furry or if you ask me now, my worldview is furry, but that
okay,
that's that's my way of saying I don't know.
okay,
Um,
so I would say that I would agree that it's a reaction, of course, but the on there's like any worldview, there's always a presupposition that goes on with that. And so for me, the reaction is due to the sinful nature that happens within human beings. And that because of that, that particular person who, for example, decides to engage in the act without the person's consent, whether it be via rape or some other form of means, to do it non-consensually, um, this person will usually sometimes do it because of the sinful nature due to one of the sins being lust and adultery. Um, and even in the Old Testament law, there was actually a law that was against um, like rape, that if it was caught, then the person was to be executed. So for it was so things like that is considered sinful and against God's law, and committing sexual sin, that would be, the issue is that they're going after sin due to the sinful nature and their desires. Whereas if the person is a born again believer with the Spirit, they do not desire those feelings.
okay, and that would bring up another question that I have. Then I
Okay,
don't know if it's all
sure.
right if I could ask. It's when you breed up when you not breed up when you bring up that that it's a sinful act and it's against what God's law, right?
Hmm. Right.
I would have to say then, what if something when someone does something against God's law or is a sin, is
Hmm.
there punishment involved with that
So if
in your eyes?
all right, so you're asking if someone breaks the law of God, sins, is there a punishment for that?
Yes.
Well, according to what we see within the Bible, it's actually mentioned in Romans chapter 6, uh, verse 23. In fact, just because I know that for later on, this will be just an audio file, but for now, I'll at least show the video format um, for or at least those who are watching this live, and as well as you head to the particular thing in my software. And Romans chapter 6, verse 23, it says, oh, for the wages of sin, that means the particular hold up. Now I'm getting lagged from this. The Greek word being used is opsonion, which is referring to the payment or the rations or uh, so basically like you get paid. This is what your payment is for sin. So the wages of sin is death. So that's what the particular thing here is. Now it's in reference here as the lexicon here points out, literally or figuratively. So in the sense here, it's referring to a spiritual death. In other words, that when we sin, we are spiritually dead. And in other words, that's where I mentioned again the sinful nature, that we desire the
Hmm.
world, the sin, more than we desire God and the things of the Spirit. And so that happens to us as we are dead in our sins, as the Bible mentions as well. And so then in that other part of the verse, it says, but the gift of God is eternal life. And so that's the whole thing, is that not only just simply that we are dead in our sins, in other words, being caught up in the desires of the world and of sin, but if we die in that, like literally die and remain in that sinful state without repentance to God and believing and putting our faith and trust in Him, then that's when we are casted into Sheol, which is the realm of the dead. And then eventually, as the Bible then says, death and Sheol is casted into the lake of fire, which is hell. And this, of course, happens on Judgment Day.
Okay. So that is one of the forms of punishment. Um,
Mhm.
I don't know how to approach this. The next. Well, no. I mean, I know how I want to approach it, but I don't know how I want to fluidly train to move to that direction. Because based on what you said, is that there will be a spiritual death or an actual death based under when judgment occurs. I assume I'm understanding that correctly.
Mhm.
So, is there any other punishments that you see valid besides that?
Well, as far as where I see for punishments that are valid, to me, in regards of judging this between the law, I could have many reasons of what I would think should happen to somebody. Um, in fact, that was actually part of the thing that kind of led me to Christianity, because back then, if you were to have met me, um, ever since I found, learned about 9/11, because back when I had, um, you know, when it happened, I was just a little kid in like like first, second grade or something like that, I believe. I forget the exact time or what happened. So whenever, I learned actually what 9/11 was, like sometime in the middle to, yeah, it was middle school. Um,
Is that when it happened for you in middle school, or were
but
you learning about it in
I
middle school?
learned of what it was because we did a project, and that was the first time I really heard of it, because the past schools really didn't cover it for some odd reason.
Okay.
Like we never really, for some odd reason, went over it until middle school. We get a project, and I'm like, what's 9/11? And so then that's when I saw the two towers. Back then, after seeing that, I pretty much just viewed that all Muslims, or then at that point all Arabians, were like this. Um, that they were wanting to, kill Americans and bomb and all that. And I even like, what was disturbing is like how there was even like written plans I had, to which I was going to try to, uh, wish that, uh, that you know that this certain, like the Kaaba, where they gather up, the black stone, the black square that they meet up at, that you travel to Mecca, if that's because that's part of the pillar, I believe, that you have to make that journey to Mecca at least one time in your life. um, I've I even had ideas that we either crash a plane there. um, and I wasn't thinking that way, and I wasn't thinking well, because I was in the mindset of, number one, being unforgiving. And then number two, I was in the mindset of hatred. Um, and so that was how I would be like, I'm the judge in this. And since they did this, this is what should be done, and that their people should never be forgiven. But then come to Jesus Christ, it was Easter 2013. I had
Hmm.
heard the gospel, in which I thought Jesus was, he would have been on my side. But I heard, when I found out that the reason why they crucified him is because that, you know, so that people like us could be forgiven for our sins, then I think that's a pretty, you know, interesting thing, because I thought he would have been on my side. But wait, he's forgiving people. I'm totally against that. I'm totally for hatred. So that shook my core. And so to me, it sounds like for God, because Jesus is God manifested in the flesh, he has a standard. And since he is the one who established the law and tells me what's right and wrong, even if I sometimes can't fully comprehend the law, since hence where my mindset was messed up back then, that, I would rather say that go with his law, since his law is higher in the hierarchy compared to not just the governmental hierarchy, but even my own, law that I had in my head, to try to make myself my own sort of arbiter of authority over right and wrong, even though to even do that, I had to borrow from Christianity, which again, I then have to go to that law, and that law says that hating these people was wrong. And that law says that this was wrong for what I was behaving like. So,
Mm. I
so
was
yeah,
like,
like in short, I don't put myself as an authority, and I don't think I could ultimately answer the question really, because then that's trying to make myself, like for example, let's say that's the law in a certain area where it says, do not kill someone or else you get locked up in jail. But you're like, well, I'm gonna just do it anyways because, well, I think in how would I do this? So it's pretty much that's how it feels to me on that.
Right, I understand. I mean, the first thing came to mind when you brought up 9/11. I was like, wait, I'm older than you. Oh yeah, I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. But okay, so that's also stating that other people are enforcing laws based on what you just said there. That if you do an act of sin against God's will, that there will also be punishment by other people. If, let's say, you did kill somebody or I killed somebody, right? Um so let's look at a hypothetical situation just for the
Sure.
sake of understanding this more now, because now we talked about, kind of the basis of some components of human drive.
Mm-hmm.
And then we were talking about, okay, doing some of these acts would be a sinful thing and against God's rules. And then now we have people that are also taking God's rules and utilizing that as a way to take judgment for situations and apply those rules as a way for punishment. So in all essence, if you or me was the only person on this world, the only punishment that I could ever receive, if I was the only person on this planet, the only punishment I could receive was from God. Correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But when you add the factors that there are other people that can have influence,
Mm-hmm.
they can now have can give that punishment towards you.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they would have to learn what is punishable, correct?
Yeah. Well, they would for some people they would learn, but I think ultimately people know in their hearts these kinds of things. I believe there's even some science. I forget these particular studies, but they even did on even like babies, that they not only had an issue of knowing what is right or wrong, but even that they had this knowledge of God. These are babies that it's referred to in the studies.
Okay. And we would say that still, I would make a counter argument is that
Mm-hmm.
these babies, these children, are still having influences of human context.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I mean, any species on this planet is going to have some context like that, to some degree. I mean,
Right.
as the life form is less evolved, it won't have as much. But so, if we're looking at just ourselves, then,
Mm-hmm.
what examples could you give that would relate towards that a child or a baby could have some understanding of what's right and wrong? What are some examples that they've done
Mm-hmm.
in these tests?
Well, as far as the issue, I can't remember the particular test at the moment, other than uh, uh, the one from Justin Barrett on the knowledge of God. So it's possible that maybe he mentions it in some of those. But as far as the citations and the quotes that I tried to write down during my thing, the only thing I have at the moment is some of the stuff from Dr. Barrett concerning just the knowledge of it. But even then, I think that, let's say, even without the studies of where I'm coming from with the whole thing, is that they have the knowledge, but rather than act upon it, or especially say, for example, the knowledge of God, that they don't say or act these things until they get to what we call the age of accountability. That's when we start seeing these kinds of things get out there in the open. And I think that's a reasonable conclusion to come to, since, of course, a baby cannot open its eyes, speak, those kinds of things. It still needs some form of care, but the knowledge and there are other genetics, for example, like, and for me, the sinful nature, all these things are still going to be there regardless of whether or not they have the ability to act upon those things.
So when is the age of accountability?
Well, there's debate on that, because nowhere does the Bible tell us that the age of what the age of accountability is.
Well, I wouldn't expect it to be a number, but what would be like the loose definition?
Some people that I've talked to and I've get at a range is between 6 to 8 would usually be the age.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
6 to 8.
Yeah.
Roughly around there. Okay, so close to puberty.
Mm-hmm. So let me.
That's a hard one, because I don't remember when I was 6 or 8 years old, barely. So I don't know what I found that I had accountability in or not. Because I would say that accountability is taught in a way, based on all the experiences that I had personally. Everything that that was wrong was told to me. I can't think of a time when I just knew it was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I had to be told. And if anybody does know me very well as being Foxler, I do a lot of wrong things, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
And so maybe I'm still learning.
Mm-hmm.
So
right.
that's what gives me the confusion when it comes to the pre-notion of knowing what's right and wrong, is that it doesn't seem to apply without some reference or understanding or learning of it.
Mm-hmm.
I just can't put my thumb on that one, in a sense of, because I haven't observed enough people at that age to determine that, and using my own experiences is probably not the smartest thing. So,
Mm-hmm.
How about you? I mean, when do you feel that you felt that you knew what you could be accountable for?
Well, I would probably say it was because I don't really have a good because back then I had I mean, and to this day I still do. I am autistic, but back then it was very functioning. Like, I'm talking, like, I could barely form too much words. I was like, basically, if you ever seen like what's a good analogy out of the movies that I've diagnosed, the like Rain Man, I would sometimes repeat things over and over again. I would my dad has even told me that every single day after school I would come home, put Jumanji on in the VHS player, because back then, because again, we were old people, we had VHSs.
I mean, I had it too. So.
Yeah. I would just keep watching Jumanji from start to finish over and over again, and I would quote random parts from the movie. So, and all these kinds of things that happened. And it's probably due to that, and that I hadn't grown up and started to try to, get used to, trying to be more social instead of being, viewed as sort of like, oh, he's a victim type of thing. Like, my stepmom didn't treat me like I was autistic. She treated me like everybody else, and I ended up, overcoming some of the boundaries of what I had. I was able to learn. I was able to actually socialize and actually be comfortable with it. Because back then I was afraid. But I have I don't remember a majority of part of my memory from back then. But I can say, if I were to take a guess, it would probably be sometime within like the first and second grade would be when I would recall accountability.
Yeah, I think I could. I mean, I could agree now as you know you were speaking about your life a little bit. I could also say that first time that I remember seeing accountability is when I was in I think second, first grade as well, and a friend of mine, his name was Brian, and he was at his desk in school, and he opened his desk to grab some chips. I think it was Pringles, if I can remember correctly. And he was just starting to eat them, and the teacher's like, "You need to put that away." And first thing came out of his mouth was "No, f you." Oh, like whoa! And and the response of the teacher was, to the principal immediately. And that, I think to me that was the first time I really saw what accountability looked like. Like you do a reaction that was negative, and I didn't even know what the F word meant at the time. Like I had no
Hmm.
notion. I just know his response was aggressive, loud. It was he was not being he was not doing what he was being told. Like if my parents would tell me to do something, I didn't do it, I would get a similar response. And I just can't believe I remembered it so well because the way he responded in such a loud, aggressive manner, I could
Right.
remember that.
Hmm.
So that was a reference. That was my first reference, knowing that if I don't listen when I'm being told to do something, that's what my my response is going to be most of the time.
Hmm.
Obviously, anybody being a child at that age would understand that that would happen if you did that. And unfortunately, I broke rules and I learned the hard way and by getting punished for that. So I would say that's where you say the age of accountability will start beginning, and I would say I would agree that's true. Um, but you have to lead with examples. So I don't know if I could agree with you on the fact that it's in us already. It
Hmm.
it's just I think it was the knee jerk reaction of getting hearing the yelling, hearing the response, and not wanting to be in that position. Not be
Hmm.
wanting to be in that position maybe because my parents did that to me before,
Hmm.
and I am just trying to protect myself from being vulnerable.
Hmm.
And not just saying not emotionally, but that could be also physical. If someone's been, abused a lot as a child or hit, you're gonna like just with animals, you hit an animal enough, they're gonna have those knee jerk reactions. And you see there's perfect example of dogs that have been abused their whole life. They can't even get pet without screaming out because they feel that they're gonna be hurt.
Hmm.
So we do things. I would say that based on all that, we do things based on the response we get. So if it's a good response, a positive response, something that makes us feel good, happy, people around us is giving us, a very protective vibe,
Hmm.
then we keep doing it and saying this is a good thing.
Okay, so let me see if I understand that correctly. So if it feels good to us and if we feel like it protects us, then that
We
means
keep
we should.
enforcing it. Yeah, we keep enforcing it.
Okay, so then if someone claims that about, you know, things like rape or bestiality, um, then would that be something that we can then say is good according to you based on the standards that you just laid out? That it would, for some people who would say that it feels A, good to them, and B, um, sort of feels like it protects them a bit.
Well, I would say that that's the reason why it happens. Probably, it's because some people find a way of comforting socially or sociopathically in their mind, um, or they're trying to get into a space that they don't feel like they're being harmed.
Okay.
It
But
doesn't.
but does it mean it? But does that mean it's justified though? I think that's the
Well, I'm not
big
saying it's
question.
justified. I'm just saying that it may be a mechanism for them. It doesn't mean it's a mechanism for someone else.
Okay.
Um, So obviously somebody else's interpretation of that would be that could be fearful, that could be painful, that could be hurtful, that could be a lot of things, and then they're going to shield themselves from the abuser.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I think where people start getting into that point where we start having the definition of mental illness
Mm-hmm.
is that the program that you learn early or that's built that happened during your childhood or during birth has to be deprogrammed out. And that's where I think in my case like Christianity helped during the time when there was no understanding of these components, and it was a way of trying to take, you could say, the sin out of man. Now, the question then you put on top of that is now when the time that I use the reference the scripture were created and brought forth, did we actually have the understanding to make the justifications at the time? Was there justification at the time, or was it just about survival? And was this a way to help, how do we say, I would use the word evolve or progress into what we are currently at?
Mm-hmm. So let me get this straight. So you're asking if I believe that there's a point where our justification has been something that's been evolving over things.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm saying is that the scriptures, with Christianity was a mechanism to help evolve us, so we don't inflict the sins upon other people.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a way to prevent using the concept of survival as the only justification to do harm to someone else. Like, because that I think would be the big issue is that once you start getting into a point where you have the consciousness to have accountability, then you are weighed between what you were doing and what you're not doing.
Mm-hmm.
So if my only option is, let's just say, well, let's push ourselves back. Let's just back in time, and the only option I have is steal this person's food and survive,
Mm-hmm.
or don't do it and die.
Mm-hmm.
Now we have to create justifications that stealing is not a good choice, because one thing is that if I confront this individual, I may be harmed in the process and I may get hurt.
Right.
But if I don't take the effort, then I may not live the next day.
Mm-hmm.
So with some language and communication and with some justification, the other option is to try to reason and work as a collective group to actually make it through. And the way that you create these boundaries between different individuals is you need a way of reason and a way of example. And I would say that this is one way of defining that. It was one way of defining this, what not to do. And
right. But here's the problem with that when, again, people could try to use that whole thing of, again, the subjective values on things like that to make it an opinion for that, and they get it together as a collective group of society. But the problem is that even that is a problematic inconsistency, and again, where objective morality or objective values fall to be in something of worthiness. For example, let me ask you some things. Just name like 3 things that you find that would be like immoral, that would have been done by society. What are 3 things that you can think of?
on top of my head,
Yes.
I have none.
There's nothing that you think that society could do that for you would be immoral.
It's hard because I'm gonna right immediately as you asked me the question, I looped into everything that was possibly that society could do to me that would be immoral, but there's always a rhyme and reason,
Hmm.
and my mind immediately went into the point. Okay, what are the possible rhymes and reasons? So
So,
obviously, killing me would be one thing that I would say that would not be morally right if society did that to me.
hmm,
But then the question comes to mind is like, what are the reasons? What are the
right.
reasons?
Okay.
Right now, I don't, because the fact that we're not using it as a mechanism. There's no justification in for anybody's survival technically right now. I don't
Hmm.
see anybody suffering and need me dead for them to survive. Then it's all social then at that point.
Okay,
Um,
so murder would be a wrong. What about stealing?
well, once again, I come to that point where I would say that I've been guilty of doing that. So
Oh.
yeah, and at those points when they occurred, I saw no other option whatsoever that I could find, and the only justification I put towards that is when I look at it as numbers at that point. How many people am I? If I'm affecting one person, to
Hmm.
me that's bad. If I'm affecting 10,000 people with my action, then because you're balancing out the effect towards 1,000, it's less amplified. So then it's more justifiable in the
Hmm.
mind because now
Okay.
you're using mathematics to outweigh percentages, and then
Right.
lower percentages are always better than
Okay.
the higher.
All right. So let's just go with those two things. So
So
let's say that someone decides that if for some reason that a society gets together, especially within the form of government, and decides to pass a law in which um, anyone that is associated with the furry raiders or is a member of it is to be you're allowed to go and raid the house and steal of anything of their property simply because of that, as well as if you feel so desired to, you have the right to murder them. If someone were to pass a law to say this, um, and if we're focusing, because so far from what you've described, it seems like you're pushing towards and holding to the idea of subjective values, then if someone was to then, be slaughtering and stealing from everybody, well, not just, well, let's say for the example here, just anyone that is part of the Raiders that's in America. And people are seeing all this happen, and especially you. Um, And if we go with that particular worldview of saying that things are subjective, then the only real thing you can do when you stand before the people that are committing these acts of murder that is violating the law of God, the only thing you can really say is, for me, this is bad. Not everything, everybody knows this is bad, and to everybody, this is bad. But only to me, this is immoral. Would that be a convincing argumentation or a convincing case that points out that these people are in the wrong, or convincing why they shouldn't do this to you?
well, see, and then that will be now we're going to look into the constant of time there because time is going to be a huge influence about when that realization comes into play. Yes, if someone let's say they did. Okay, it really depends. So if we look at it in a sense that somebody passed the law and said, yeah, they could come and murder me or murder anybody else that might more or my partner, whatever, right?
Right.
the first reaction is going to come out. It's going to be like, no, they can't do that.
Right.
But when you're faced in a situation where you have the only option of life and death, then you're going to take the option that's going to give you the best result. Now, not everybody picks the greatest option. I mean, one option is to flee and hide. The second option, which what I would take, is that I would lose all justification at that point, and then I would try to protect myself, and I would hurt as many people as I could until my last breath. Now, am I justified hurting them and killing other people? Now, so that's an interesting component there, because at the moment when that situation is occurring, you don't think about the morality. You think about what it's going to take for you to get to the next step. So you're not the one face down on the ground. Once everything is said and over and you do survive, that's when you reflect on what happened, and to try to justify what you've done towards other people and what people were trying to do to you. And that's where I think the problem lies, is now the mind is in a way corrupted with an issue where you don't know if it was right or wrong, because you knew you had to do it to survive, but at the same time, you also did this what they were trying to do to you.
All right.
So who do you answer? I mean, I know what you're going to say, who I should answer to. But,
well, of course.
Who am I going to answer to if I don't have Christianity?
Well, even if you don't have Christianity, like, I would assume by that you mean you don't have the belief in Christianity, that you still would answer to God, because it would be true whether you believe it or not, just like 2 + 2 = 4, regardless if someone affirms it to be true or not. So you would still, as the Bible says, every man is going to give an account to God. So when your last days are up, whenever they are, because again, we don't know when that time will come, you'll be standing before God, needing to give an account of what you have done. So in other words, all the things that you have done, and whether you put your faith and trust in Christ, these things will be shown and held when you stand before him on that day. So that would be the person that you give an account to, is God, the creator who made you and the one who established the law that he placed within your heart.
I mean, I could say also that I wouldn't disagree with the fact that that's a possibility. What first came to mind when you brought that up is like, well, what happens when someone flips the card in their head, and when they were trying to do those acts to protect themselves, found pleasure in it or found goodness because they found it as a protection. So they found a protection out of it that's going to protect them and made them feel that they were in a safe space. And by hurting other people, they become in that safe space, and they continue doing that regardless if the threat's there or not anymore.
Right.
What that is where the deprogramming concept I come into play, is where now you realize you're stuck in a loop, because now everybody's a threat, and you're trying to keep yourself safe when there really is no threat. And I can see where people get into that when if they've been abused a lot.
Okay, so but why would they want to defend themselves? Why make that particular decision?
Well, I'm just saying, when you brought it up, saying that when people were going to come after me or the Raiders or anybody else, and you defend yourself and you hurt other people in the process because you are protecting yourself and you're putting yourself in a safer space, you get into the mindset by doing this, by hurting other people or eliminating other people, it's keeping me safe. And you continue doing it even if the threat isn't there anymore. Because
right, but I don't think it's not. Well, I would say not just simply that. I mean, even protection from certain people, because I know that for your particular stance, someone who is dating someone, either dating or engaged. I don't know where you and Cody are at. I haven't gotten to ask about that particular thing, I believe. But I do know that that would probably be someone you would want to protect. And again, just pointing that out, and you saying all this, and how your response is there, that again still shows my point is that again people go to the law that has been revealed to them, and that they have that knowledge in them because that particular thing is again mentioned in the law, that if someone was to strike or invade your house, and even the principle itself, Old and New Testament, of when someone, especially from another nation, decides to wage war or attack, and they strike first, you have the right then to defend yourself, not just simply be in a pacifistic sense, but if someone is trying to like threaten, not just simply you, but even like your family or your loved ones, you are not simply allowed, but sometimes even obligated to defend, do self-defense. So I would say that again, that's going back to proving my point of that we can't simply say that it's subjective based on if we feel good and all that, because ultimately that can't justify it. Because again, the same thing could be said about the people who feel that it's feels good to murder you, because again, that's where the whole debate goes: is how can we ultimately, definitively say that something is right? Because, for example, right now, no one's the majority of the concerning the consensus says it's okay to go out and murder Foxler or the furry raiders. But then if it's subjective and that's going to be the ultimate standard in morality, then the next time we get a government or some other kind of society that decides to be in some sort of hierarchical power of control, they allow themselves to pass that thing, and that's ultimately what is deemed the final authority on matters of morality and such. So,
I get what you're saying there, and that would require that we would already have some we would have already some pre-notion. Now, if somebody that was you being a child and the only thing let's example, like, God forbid I reproduce. No. What if I've been put in that position where the only option I do to survive is to fight off, and let's say I had a child and I have to protect them, but also they're also seeing and witnessing the behavior that I'm inflicting on other people, they're going to assume, based on the fact that I'm doing that act to protect them and make them feel safe, is that they will inherit that behavior down the road. But because on top of that, if we look at it as a societal thing, is that the stigmas that have been announced on me will also be announced on the child, and they will have no other option but to protect themselves. So that's one way I look at it.
Yeah. Okay. So let me try to ask
a different question.
well. I feel like with some of the things that we've gone over, I do want to try to, because as I said, you definitely had some time to ask me some questions. I do want to get to some things with you on the matter. So let me just put this out. So earlier you have said that you have stolen before, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Have you ever, lied about anything? Whether if it be some, just even if it's a small matter.
So like, example, like telling my boss I'm sick, but I'm not actually sick. Should get off.
Correct.
Yeah, I have.
Okay. So, what do you call someone that steals?
In which terms? What definition am I looking for? What wording am I looking for?
Oh, just simply what would you call someone that steals? Just in a basic sense. If you had just one word to describe that.
If I had one word, well, obviously I use thief. That comes in mind, but then
right.
trust me, I had something come out of my mouth. It was just about to come out of my mouth. I'm like, well, that's not gonna work. That's gonna make me hate me more. But I was gonna be like, yeah, it's that joke when you
right.
It's about the TV, walking off at night.
So a thief, and so what would that? So since you've stolen something, what would that make you?
A thief.
All right. Now, you said you've lied. What do you call someone that tells lies?
A liar.
So what would that make you?
A liar.
No, you're a lying thief. So
Oh, okay. Oh well. Well, if you want to get technical, I'm a neo-Nazi, animal fucking, pedophile, hacker, domestic terrorist,
no.
yeah, blah 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 blah, lying thief. There
Okay.
you go. Yeah, I know. It's just I've been called
Right.
so many things, so at this point it's just like, huh?
Right, but that's the thing. I didn't call you those things.
No, no, you didn't call me. I'm just referencing what I've
but
generally been exposed to.
right. But I'm just saying, like for the first two things, I simply asked the question that what would these people that do these acts be called, and then I asked, so then what would that make you? And you, by your own admission, admitted that you are a lying thief, and that's only just so far two commandments of the Ten Commandments out of all that. Um, so out of the discussion that we have had, especially since it seems a lot of this we've been getting into morality. Um, if you
Right.
were to be judged by this, if you were to be judged based on those two and various others, I'm sure that exist out there, what do you think? If you were to meet God, what do you think would be your case? What do you think would be where you go as a result? Where would be the judgment? What would be the closing case?
Well, I mean, I could be a furry trash and say I'm gonna yiff in hell, but the to be honest, I don't see what judgment there will be because I don't know what the punishment is. To be
Well,
honest,
I explained it early in the beginning.
maybe clarify it a little bit so that I mean we could. I mean I have an idea. I just want to kind of hear it from you first, so I'm not like skipping over things and I'm like relaying the wrong information.
Well, so here's what happened. Um, when, like I mentioned, Romans 3 or Romans
Oh yeah,
6.
death. Yeah,
Yeah,
death.
death. That's the first part, though. That's the
Right.
spiritual death that we have, and that's where we are, as the Bible says, dead in our sins. That we desire things of the world. But whenever we die in that state, then we are sent to Sheol. We are sent to Hades. That depends on the Hebrew is Sheol. The Greek term is Hades or Hades, however you want to pronounce it, because there's different ways of. It's basically like a potato thing within the Koine Greek. But the passage then later on says that death and Hades will be casted into the lake of fire, and that's hell. And so that those who reside there, meaning the wicked, those who are dead in their sins and have not repented and put their faith and trust in Jesus Christ will head there. So that was what I mentioned earlier. So refresher on that, where would you then would mean, you know,
I mean, first thing is I can say I'm effed, but uh,
but that's the thing though, you don't have to be um at that
well,
point.
and once again, I'm gonna say what I did say before. I don't know what it's gonna be like until I learn from it. So,
Right. So do you think though that I'm just saying this now because I don't expect anything at the moment. It definitely took years for me to improve. But like, we like, the remember Romans 3:23, which is different from the other one, says that we're all sinners, that we've all sinned and we've all done things, uh, you've done your fair share of things. I'm not going to get into the details. You only answered two questions I had, and that is sufficient enough concerning the issue. But I myself have done things that are worse. Um, but even that, um, you know, I have with seeing what the Bible says and what the gospel is,
mhm.
that we're sinners then saved by grace, that if we put our faith and trust in Christ and we turn from our sins, we repent, because Jesus says in Luke that unless you repent, you will likewise perish. Um, that unless we turn from our sins, turn from the lifestyle of our wicked ways, and I'm not saying, of course, this because I have to clarify this to some people. I'm not saying that being a furry is this whole thing. I'm not like the guy that's going at some of the furry cons saying "yif in hell" and all that kind of nonsense. I
That's
just
fun. I mean, I find it hilarious. But
well, I mean, some people do because it meant to become a meme later. I found, but
oh yeah,
anyway,
it did. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
But the issue is that where's your identity as far as like because when you look at Galatians and First Corinthians, they mentioned that certain people will inherit the kingdom, and it's people that identify with that as basically you only know this person because they you know constantly are an adulterer, drugs, abusing of human beings, like things like this that that's their identity and that's their lifestyle. That's their whole thing. So that if we put our faith in Christ, um, then that can change you. It's done it for me, and I'm just going to say that to put that offer out for you on the table, that could happen for you if and because if you don't put your faith and trust in Christ, as I have stated, and what we even as you admitted, that it wouldn't look good for you come Judgment Day. But someone has paid the price for that, paid the sins
Right. Right.
on Calvary, and that was the whole purpose of the cross. It wasn't so that simply we just had this ability to, you know, uh, do our own deeds to redeem ourselves, but rather that is through the fact that His blood not only clears up the debt, our sin debt against God, but rather it also clears up, and washes us and makes us a new person. The Bible says that it, take out the heart of stone that has that desire for sin and wickedness, and gives us a heart of flesh, that we have a new spirit and we have a new mindset towards how we view things. That's why for me, I was able to look at all the racism I did back then, and the hatred I harbored in me, and view that that was bad, and I was praying that get this away from me. So you
I
know.
mean, it's a good point. I would say, in my response to that is once again, I always say I learn from examples or what I see, and I know that people sin. It happens, and you learn from it, and you try to improve. Those are some of the goals I have. But what if I said to you that when judgment comes, I want to pay for my own sins without I don't want the forgiveness. I want to pay in the most hardest way possible. If that's the death of my soul, then that's the punishment I get. What if I'm willing to accept it that way? What am I at that point?
Mhm. So that if you're willing to accept the punishment,
Yes.
well, at that particular state, I don't think that personally, I don't think that people would be willing to accept this. I actually just got done reading an article about this where, you would definitely have no problem with the sin, but by the time you see the area, the Bible describes it as a place of torment that describes the state being there will be weeping and gnashing of the teeth, which pretty much describes like the kind of like you claw your head and you grit your teeth until the entire dust of it falls down.
I mean, I could say if I ever do reach old age, I won't have many teeth to grind. But
Hmm.
I would say that yeah, you could say that's what the likelihood or the possibility or that is what's going to happen if I accept my sins and take the punishment. Um, but is there a problem with that? I mean, on your end, as an individual, knowing me or knowing someone else like that, if they're willing to just accept it for what it is that a problem?
Hmm. Do I think that's a problem that you would just simply accept punishment?
Yeah.
To me, I think that would be because then that's pretty much just and wanting to go into. you know, uh, something that's going to be, for example, it's eternal. So you're wanting to go there eternally, where you will suffer for an eternity. I think that would be a very bad thing. Um, Most certainly. And that's why I don't want that for you. I want you to be in the grace of God, and that's why I want you to be someone who has a right standing with Him. And that's why for any time I hear someone, whether it be a sin of whatever they deal with, whether it be um, hatred, racism, and again, not necessarily saying all these things apply to you. I'm just saying in general, lust, hatred, um, racism, bestiality, pedophilia, any of these things, regardless of just an exhaustive list, go to Galatians 5 verses 19 through 21 and 1 Corinthians 6 verses 9 through 10. And of course, there's translation difference I have with 1 Corinthians, but that's a different issue. But the point is that there are some people that some people would have some hatred for, but to me, I care and want some of these people to be saved because I know that if they put their faith in Christ, that they accept the saving message, then there is a transformation that happens. That's where what repentance is. Metanoia, this is the Greek word that is used for it, and it means to have a change of mind. So that when one repents of a certain sin, what they're doing is they're having a change of mind toward that. So, for example, racism. And you have a repentance of that. You hate the mentality of racism. You hate the concept and the effects of it and the damage it does. And so there's where the repentance lies. And the same thing happens to those who do drugs, those who have abused their spouse, those who like all of that, has a mindset. And so, yeah.
No, I mean, I get it. I know when you brought up the racism, first thing was going to come out of my mouth, be like, "No, I'm just a rice nigga."
Mhm.
But dumb stuff like that. I would. I don't know how much longer we have to talk about this, but
Well, let me just ask this: do you feel like there's anything? Because yeah, like I agree, it definitely has probably been a oh wow, definitely has reached the hour mark. But I will say this: um, is there anything that you feel rather it rather I still have to catch myself here. Is there anything that you feel that you have done, whether or not you want to say the specific thing you've done? Do you feel like there's something that is in your conscience that you feel guilty about and it's wrong, um, and you wish that it would stop? Do you feel like there's anything like that that you wish to turn from, or that there's something that you feel that you're doing is wrong, um, even if you don't want to directly say what it is? Do you feel like that you have something like that going on in your life?
hmm. Uh, I don't. I don't. If I really think about it hard, I don't think I have anything that's lingering over me. I
Hmm.
know that I have things in the past that have happened, and then I found ways to resolve them. Um, but one thing I want to ask: when you said that you're here to help people, that right, by the sound of it, is that you don't want them to go through this eternal suffering when
Right.
that time
And
comes.
right. Right. Even you. Yes. Like
Right,
anyone.
right. And so that's genuine from you. I mean, I can hear it. It's genuine when I hear it. I just want
Yeah.
to confirm it's
Hmm.
genuine.
Yeah.
And my response to that would be is we this is the reason why, in my eyes, this is my personal opinion, it's just what I see, how I observe, this is the reason why Christianity should exist. And it should exist because it's a To me, it's a methodology for you to tell me that, hey, there is someone on the other end listening. There is somebody else on the other end there, and you're not alone in this.
Mm-hmm.
And the world needs more of that. It needs more of that. It needs people that are willing to offer what they have, even if you don't agree with it, are willing to offer what they have to help. And by you doing that and you telling me that is going to make me sit and think. And it's going to make me go through my life and see where my flaws are. And I'm not saying that, I'm going to find God immediately from all this. It could take years. It could take decades before that time occurs.
Mm-hmm.
If it ever does. If it ever
right.
does. I'm not saying whatever direction it may go. But that influence is enough to help. And it's not met with hate or haste or any of the sins that you've read of. It's met with compassion and real, truthful inner heart. So to me, that's the first step. That is the step that is required. And for me, that will allow me to evaluate deeper about the things that you ask me. Is there anything that is holding me down or holding me back or lingering over me that's causing me any pain or things I want to find forgiveness in? And I think, as an example, if anybody doesn't know my past at all, but I spent quite a few years, and you've seen a lot of it, that have been filled with a lot of negativity, has been filled with just a very, and I know some of it I force it upon myself, so it's not like I don't, like, it's like when someone stabs themselves, it's kind of the same thing. But sometimes I purposely do it to myself. But the thing is, it's a way of finding that neutral ground where I don't, because in a way I'm trying to protect myself from a certain set of situations, and maybe that's the reason why I'm not as open to the ideas, because I've spent so long putting a blanket of this, these moralities, these logic components, the way of looking at the world in a much different way. Now, I don't know if that's an advantage to me or not, but we'll have to see. And only time can tell.
All right.
What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I would agree. I definitely think like I said, it takes time for some people. I've known, like, I remember there was this one time, and this is definitely why I have hopes in you and others. If you go back and listen to the first time I ever did a Q&A, back then it was called Ask Christian Anarchist. If you were to go back and watch that, there's a particular individual on there who I had known that would be like very hostile. Like, he would keep saying that, look at me, I'm just like tossing you around like a rag doll and just beating you up because I know how to refute and make you look like a silly, stupid Christian. I had this guy be like that, and I kept having patience with him over and over again, and willing to, answer any questions he had and talk with him. And then I stopped hearing from him for a while. I then get him a little message, a little contact from him saying he wants, talk, and then I go talk with him, and next thing I know, I think it was like 6-7 months, I believe, since we had last talked on that, and he had converted to Christianity, and he said they definitely helped with what I had been trying to talk with him about, and some of my answers helped him go there. But of course, there's other things that led to that decision as well, especially sometimes he was struggling with, with his wife that was currently at that time in the hospital. But he had help from other people, but I was among one of them. But again, that took like 6 or 7 months before that would happen. that he changed into this peaceful, gentle, wonderful guy that was definitely able to actually have a decent conversation with compared to the last time. And that, he's turned his life around and has all these different things going on for him. And I've seen it not just in that, but also for me, it happened as well. Because, again, you had preachers and all that trying to get to me, but it wasn't until Easter of 2013 that I decided to give my life over and actually have that repentance, that transformation that comes over. So, yeah, I would agree there that it definitely will take some time. And again, I'm willing to offer myself to be, if you need anybody to talk to, message me or anything like that, so that way I can help out. And in fact, here's what I want to do. I want to make an offer with you. You don't have to pay. You don't have to pay me anything, because I know sometimes you like doing that, but I want to do this for free. There's a website that I like going to, and that I always do this to be sort of the bit of a missionary work over where I'm at. But there's this site. Hold up. Apparently having a thing where it's freezing on my end. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Stop having an affair with your computer.
Well, I don't know what's going on. Like, it's like, and it's even on this Hangouts thing. It's frozen on there. So, oh, that's strange. Yeah, I don't know what's going on right now, because yeah, I'm frozen right now, so I can't even end the stream right now.
Oh, do you want me to get some hot water? Just like pour.
How's that gonna help out any?
You're frozen.
Oh, I see what you did there. I see.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, because I don't want to leave this awkward as I try to reset to make the offer.
Well, do you require anything but your voice to make the offer?
Well, not just simply that, but even to end the stream for later.
Well, if we exit out after the stream ends, then you should be fine.
True. Well, actually, no, because it'll still take a while to do that. That's what I found that's crazy, is that that it won't necessarily because it'll be on for 5 minutes, and that's what there was actually a past incident whenever we were using these things for. In fact, hold up. Actually, I know how to fix that to still keep me going a bit. Let me just log in from my.
I can rub it. It'll keep going.
Boy. Let me get my phone, because I can actually join from there. So let me just
dual wheeling that.
Yeah. So let me just quickly log in from here. So
I'll be right back after.
All right. So, oh well, apparently the other one's still up. Yeah. But now there's now there's two of me. That's how.
Oh no! One is evil.
Nah, we're just both very anime weeaboo trash. That's what it is.
I know. Oh my god, I can't believe.
Yeah, I know. Oh,
friends with a weeaboo.
There you go. All right, so I'm gonna try to get in back on the computer now.
Got to kill yourself off and pop back in.
Oh. That's strange. Let me try this again. This will make a fun blooper for later. Oh, here we go. We got to make the transition. All right, there we go. Well, sorry, folks, that we were having some technological deficiencies. All right. So now that I can get serious and back to what I was trying to get to, um, so there's a site called Chapel Library. I use this for my work when I'm in real life going around evangelizing. And right here, this is what I want to show you.
Okay.
So what this has is free literature from the past that is benefits. They got tracts, they got booklets, paperbacks, all this sort of stuff that is very beneficial from all kinds of people of all eras, from modern day to the time of the Puritans. Um, all these wonderful folks that have uh, written this kind of stuff. So, like advice for seekers, from Spurgeon. By the way, very good individual. Um, and so, like all these things, and what I want to do, and this is why again you can like message me on the Telegram about this. That I'm wanting to send at least a tract and 9 little pieces of literature. And again, the booklets are at least 24 to 32 pages long at their max. So it won't be too long of a thing. I want to send you some of that stuff since you said that you definitely you're going to be contemplating. I want to give you some things to help with that food for thought, with that contemplation. So yeah, I just, because again, anything that I can do to at least help plant that seed, plant in that thing to help out, you know, I feel that would really get us somewhere. And I feel like that would help you, not just help me with, knowing that I've gotten to you, and not just with, other people who would most certainly be happy, but also I think this would really be of a big benefit to yourself. And you'll start to see that change and you'll start to feel it. Because remember, I think that was one thing you kept talking about, the feelings. You'll know what I'm talking about concerning the that repentance and that change that goes on.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I always see change every day, so I don't. We'll see.
Right.
I mean, I could tell you getting shot with a nail gun it would hurt, but it didn't hurt until
True.
I got to the hospital.
There you go.
It was a framing nail gun. Oh, right through the hand. Well, it was my 3 fingers. Went right through both 3 fingers. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I shot myself. Yeah, drive to the hospital now.
Boy. All right. Well, I think we'll just we'll call it here then. And again, message me and I'll make sure to help get that out to you. But I do thank you for coming on here. There is a thing that I usually try to do, and that is that I usually pray. You don't mind if I do that, right?
I don't mind. No.
Okay. So, folks, we're gonna end the session here in prayer, and then we'll say our goodbyes and our good nights for this session. So here we go. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for bringing us together on this podcast. We thank you for bringing Foxler on here and allowing us to have this conversation and this discussion. We ask that you be with him and guide him, Lord. We know that he's got his own problems and such that he has, and that you know those problems, for you know all things, Lord. We ask that you be with him and that you guide him, as I've said, but that you show him the message and enlighten him of it, and that he be convinced of the truth that you have, and that he knows of the love that was revealed through your Son, Jesus Christ, of whom his blood was shed for the atonement of the sins of us sinners. It is in his name I pray, Lord. Amen. All right. So that is all for theological discussion for tonight. We thank you for tuning into this very special and probably later on will be considered controversial episode. But regardless, we do what we can and we do what we must. So till then, this has been RC Apologist. Take care.